Yo, yo, yo. Hey guys, welcome back to another awesome edition of the Best Practices Show podcast. Dentistry is filled with a lot of cool people that are pretty smart and have some great information, and they love to share it. Well, I have a new friend. His name's Dr. Paul Etchison, and he created what's called the Dental Heroes podcast. And we connected, and he said, let's get together and chat. I thought, let's do it. So today, I wanted to know his story, how this all got started, and I even throw a few questions at him that I think you'll absolutely enjoy. So please listen up. I hope you guys enjoy this, and we'll see you soon. Hey guys, welcome back to the Best Practices Show podcast. You know the GM around here. I get to find the coolest people in the universe that are helping dentists everywhere. Great speakers, great teachers, great influencers, and great podcasters to give you some information, help you create a better practice and better life. And I got a new friend, new guest on today, Dr. Paul Etchison, and he's got a great podcast I just started listening to a little while ago called Dental Practice Heroes. And I got him on today, and we're going to get the inside scoop on how he created this. We've got the hero behind the Dental Practice Heroes on. Paul, thanks for being on today. I appreciate you.
Hey, Kirk, thanks so much for having me, man. I'm surprised we haven't done it before, but here we are.
I know, and you're just south of me. So I'm in Milwaukee, you're in Chicago. So I want, I'm on this journey with the listeners. So give us a little background. Who's Dr. Paul Etchison? Who are you? Where do you practice?
Yeah, so I did a startup practice in 2012 and went into it about 2 years out of school. And I said, I don't know how this is going to go, but I just want my own place. I want the autonomy. I wanted to create a special experience for the patients and be very intentional about it. And I really couldn't do that in my associateship. So I was ready. I opened up, had no idea how successful it would be. And it was stressful. We learned a lot, but we grew. And we got to a point where we eventually, I just couldn't see all the patients we were seeing. We just had too many patients, and we started losing a lot of patients because they couldn't get in with us. And I never wanted an associate, and that was never my intention, but I brought on an associate. And then to more manage my growing team, I cut my clinical days down to 3 days a week, kept growing the practice, eventually expanded from 5 ops to 11 ops, brought on more associates, cut myself out a little bit more. Now, fast forward 10 or so years later, I have 3 full-time associates. I have 3 specialists, and we have an 11-op practice doing roughly about $6 million in collections. And I am just doing ortho, band and bracket on kids. I'm doing that 1 day a week, either 2 or 3 weeks a month. And the other time I'm just managing my practice, growing it with my team. And I still love being part of the practice. I don't want to leave it completely, but I feel like I've found this newfound balance in the past few years and that's what I've been doing a lot of doing is sharing how to do that, because it has been such a change in my life as far as the stress and keeping work away from life and not thinking about work when you're at home with your family, that the way I have structured my practice has made such a huge difference in my life. And that's what I've been doing. I've just been sharing that with the dental world, hoping that some other people can experience it too. So that's a pretty short, condensed version, but that's the past 12 years of my life, I guess.
Okay, well, I have a lot of questions in the last 12. So you got into podcasting, you mentioned 7 years ago. Why? Why did you pick podcasting? And we'll also talk about the 2 books that you wrote.
Yeah, podcasting, I would say I dropped myself down to 3 days. Okay, so then it was like, wow, I got this 4th day. Let's work on growing the business. And what's amazing is when you have time and the energy to work on growing your business and you start really putting energy into it, what you realize is there's only so much you can do. So instead of doing that, eventually I started golfing a lot. And then that gets a little old. And then I was like, okay, how about a podcast? Because this is 2018, 2017. And I'm like, yeah, I guess I'll start a podcast. So I started it, really enjoyed it, loved interviewing people. It was about right when my first book came out. And then 4 years later, I wrote my second book, which I love my second book so much more because it's got all that knowledge from years of podcasting. And and you get to be the interviewer and you're asking questions and it's like, this is for the listeners, but part of it's for me. These are things going on in my practice because I'm running a practice as well. So it just kind of happened, and love doing it, still doing it, consistent releases. It's a big part of my life. I mean, if people ask me, what do? I still say I'm a dentist. I think I'm pretty close to saying a podcaster though, because
There you
I
go.
spend a lot more time doing this than I do dentisting now. So,
Yeah,
but yeah, I really love doing it. And it's been a hobby that's turned into more of a profession side gig. And now it's kind of my main gig.
that's awesome. Okay, dental practice heroes. Where did that come from? Tell us the why behind that.
Yeah. So the why behind that is my first book. And this is the way I really feel about practice is that sometimes we're looking for, the right things to say. We're looking for the right operations and all this stuff. And I think a lot of it comes from being the hero in your practice. I'm not saying saving lives through making people healthy or anything like that. I'm saying being the leader of your team, being the moderator of discussion, being the trainer of everyone on your team is that if we can lead a big team, oh man, dude, what can we do? And I had the first 9 years, and I used to love saying this, and now sometimes I don't like to talk about it, but the first 9 years of my practice, I had no turnover. And we got up to like almost 30 people. And then after COVID, man, I just been getting crushed as far as like we have turned the same three chairs in my practice, like an assistant, a front desk, and an associate. We just keep turning them, because it's like we're just struggling to find the people to replace it. And I think all practice owners can relate right now. You have to balance tolerating bad behavior because it's so hard to replace people right now. So we've walked that line and we have just said, hey, we got to stay true to our values, and bigger team right now, almost 40 people. And we let go of people when they don't measure up. And sometimes we're short staffed because of it. I'd say most of the times we're short staffed because of it. But like what I say is I think that low turnover had a lot to do with the leadership. I'd say the new turnover that I'm experiencing since COVID is maybe a cultural change in the labor landscape, but also my non-willingness to tolerate mediocrity anymore in my practice. And I think that has made a big difference in the culture of my team that is still there. And I still have, I think I still have 8 or 9 people that have been with me almost 12 years now. So
Yeah.
it's really fulfilling for me to be the leader of that team. That's what Dental Practice Hero means. So it's the title of my first book, became the title of my podcast, title of the second book. And now, you know what? Even if I didn't like it, I don't think I can get away from it. It's stuck.
You're locked in. You're locked in.
Yeah.
You're speaking my jam though, because the whole values thing. How old are you?
I am 43 now. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I'm 54. So you got a lot more energy than me. And coming out of COVID, I'd always been aware. I don't know. I'm probably sure. I didn't ask you this, but you probably read Traction by Gino Wickman or
Yes,
something
absolutely.
like that.
I read a lot. Yeah.
You read a lot. So the values thing, I'd always been aware of it. I've always spoken about core values. I love the idea of it. It was awesome. And then coming out of COVID, we had the same situation, and we leaned hard into like, let's do this the right way. And I completely agree. I mean, since leaning heavy into core values, it's somebody's got to put the flag in the ground, don't you think? And just go like,
Right.
we're just going this direction. It's about behaviors. But I think, tell me what you think most people get wrong about core values. Because it's not new. It's
Mhm.
been refreshed. But what do most dental practices get wrong about the values piece of it in a team from your perspective?
Yeah. I think most people do it. Most people make the document. Most people at least do the mission and vision, and they couldn't tell you what it is. And I could give you a condensed version of mine, but I don't think I know what mine is anyway. But I love the core values document. And what I think they miss the mark on is not articulating it to the team, not going through it at a yearly meeting or every now and then when you need to touch on it, and not utilizing it enough when communicating with their team, say when a patient, something happens or something happens interpersonally, referring back to these are our core values. And I love utilizing it because I mean, it's not completely black and white, but it gives us something to stand on.
Right.
Sometimes we'll have, I think a lot of our employees, they have issues with fairness. That's where we see a lot of culture go bad. Somebody is allowed to show up late when other people always show up on time. where you might allow them to show up late now and then too, but they just don't do it because they're not late inside like this person. This person's just late in everything they do.
Right.
And when you start to tolerate things, and it just lowers the bar for everybody. I like using we're out on the boat and we're rowing. We're in that rowing competition. You got someone who's really just giving 50%. I mean, at some point, like the other people are either going to stop rowing as hard because they know they don't have to because this person's not, or you got to toss that person overboard knowing that there's nobody out there on the water to replace them. Sometimes they're better. Sometimes that empty seat is so much better than having a low performer. So I would say they really missed the mark on that. And I would say another thing that I think a lot of us, it just relating to that core values, is inspiring our teams to believe that what we provide to our patients is valuable and beneficial. And I can mention, like, I remember I picked some people off Facebook that were our patients, and it was this one guy, and he was sitting there with his daughter at a daddy-daughter dance. And I'm like, hey, who remembers this guy? They're like, oh my God, that's him. He came in last week. He just did his other SRP. And I'm like, okay, this person put off getting their SRPs, their deep cleanings, for almost 5 years. We were so comforting in the way that we answered the phone, the way that we presented the finances, the way that we conducted our care, that he not only got one half of his mouth done, but he got the other half of his mouth done. And that wasn't just the clinician. That was the people at the front. That was the people in the back. That was every single person that interacted with this person. And then I said to my team, do you think, yes or no, did we increase the odds this guy will walk this little girl down the aisle? And they were just like blown away. And I showed some pictures of these full mouth rehabs. Look at what a difference we make in these big cases. But then what I want to emphasize, and I think people should do with their team, is that big case with rampant decay. It didn't just one day they woke up, it was like that.
Right.
At one time, it was just like an occlusal filling on number 14, and they didn't treat it. And it turned into a root canal, and it spread to the other teeth. And then they lost a tooth, which puts more function on the other teeth. So having your team understand that this stuff that we do day to day and take for granted does make a big difference. It's just sometimes we miss it because it takes such a long period of time to get there. But if that cavity's past the enamel, it ain't getting better. It's not going to get better. And left alone, it will eventually lead to tooth loss, which affects our lives, our quality of life. So tying the core values into what do we do, and then inspiring your team to say, what is the greatness we are putting into the world? Because sometimes the people at the front, I remember when I did this meeting, I had 2 of the people at the front text me, oh my gosh, I feel so much differently about my job now. I never realized I made a difference. I'm like, you absolutely make a difference. Everybody makes a difference, not just the person performing the treatment.
Yeah, I love that. I love it. I love it. I have so many questions on what you've already said. So I want you to go back to this. You mentioned leadership, and a lot of people listening to this are gonna be like, how did you cross this chasm of like a growing practice and working less? And before we hit the go button, you said a big turning point, something that you love to talk about in your career is a leadership team. Can you explain what that is, how it came together, and how does it work now?
Well, I would say everything I learned in my practice life, I learned by doing. It's like I had mentors, I had help, but everything that took me 12 years, I think I could do it in 4, knowing what I know now, which is all of us and everything if we're always growing. But what my leadership team consisted of originally was me promoting an office manager. And I know a lot of people have the office manager, but I'm talking about an office manager that's not at the front desk, that is back in an office, taking things off of my plate, managing the office. So that was the first step. Eventually, we reached a size where I was like, gosh, honestly, it was burnout. I was just getting so burnt out. Every time my phone dinged, I was like, who is texting me from the practice and what is the new fire I have to attend to?
Right.
And it's exhausting. And I had like 40 team members. So I told them, I said, hey, if each of you guys or girls, you text me once a week, that's still 40 issues I have to deal with. That's 4 a day or whatever. What's the math? I don't know, 6 a day, 6 a day. So they're like, oh, it's just a quick question. I'm like, everybody's got a quick question. Every hygienist just needs a quick exam. Every assistant just needs a quick this, that. And it's like, man, it was just draining me. And I really needed to suck that bandwidth back in and figure out what to do. So I promoted some people on my team. I made a lead hygienist. I made a lead dental assistant. And I made a lead front desk person because I wanted a leader at the front desk since my office manager was back in an office. And slowly over time, instead of me meeting one-on-one with every member of my team, I just started meeting with my leadership team once a week and then eventually twice a week, which is I'm sorry, every other week. That's what we do right now. And what has been cool is over the years, they have taken on more and more responsibility where I would need to do something and I would grab one of them. Hey, do you think you can handle this? Yeah, I think I can handle it. Cool. Let me know if you need support. And now it's to the point where they do all the hiring, they do all of the firing, they do all of the performance reviews, all the one-on-ones. They handle every little thing that's like this person's not turning their rooms or pulling their weight, and I'm upset about it. And what that's allowed me to do is get above that noise and really focus on what is the high level things of this practice and what do we stand for. And I'm just like the culture warrior now, man. I'm just like inspiring people, going in there, being enthusiastic. I still see patients, like not that much, but I still see patients. And I'm there for the big decisions. Like our most recent one is we dropped Delta about almost exactly a year ago now. So that was a fun, interesting year. Everything went well. We learned a lot of lessons through it.
Yeah.
But, it's like I was focused on what can we do with Delta. Right now, we're focused on phone training again. That's what we're doing right now. And I love being the leader and the manager of the practice, but not having to deal with the little fires. And I think that is something no matter what your size. I mean, I've got almost 40 people, so I've got 4 people on my leadership team. Every dental owner needs 1 or 2 people that they can just count on to run with things, to go with things. And we just got a new server. We got 3 different bids, set up the install, put it on a day that we were going to be closed for a meeting. I did none of it. All I had to do was approve the price. Hey, these are 3 bids. I think we should go with this one. You got my blessing. Go for it. And it's just taken care of. It has changed my life the way I enjoy my dental practice. And I think anyone can do it. It just took me a while to get out of the way. That was the hardest part. Get out of the way and trust people.
Yeah, totally. I totally agree. I have a leadership team too. And you're talking my language. Like it's absolutely life-changing. Let me ask you about this though. A lot of dentists listening, there's kind of a number dynamic and everybody has their own thoughts on this. So let's say I'm a dentist, listen to this, and I have 4 team members. Now I have 6. Now I have 8. Where do I need to start putting in a leadership team? Like, where's the critical number? Because I've learned that once you get near 10, it's very hard to communicate with everyone effectively. Wouldn't you agree? What's been your experience with that?
Yeah, and that was exactly what happened in our practice. I want to say we were about 10, 12, and we started noticing like, hey, why'd you do that? We're not doing it that way. When did we say we weren't doing that way? We did say that. Weren't you at the meeting? Yeah. Or did we talk about that at the meeting? I thought, or maybe, I don't know where I said that, but we said, and it was just like, we started dropping the ball all the time.
Right.
I would say, you know what? I mean, I don't want to say this is only a big practice thing because I think there is always an opportunity to have one person on your team that can take a lot off your plate. I mean, I think when we're smaller, when we're doing maybe 600, 700K a year, we don't want to really expand our payroll yet because we haven't really, I don't know, we haven't gotten to that higher level of profitability to get over our fixed costs. But I mean, you're right. 10, 12 people, you need it for communication reasons. I think, I mean, if you asked any dentist, hey, would you pay an employee an extra 20 grand a year so you never had to do this, and this ever again? I mean, I would say, yeah. I think most dentists would say, yeah. And the thing is, it's probably not going to cost you 20 grand. And the thing is too, is these things that you hate doing, there are people on your team that just can't wait to have a new responsibility and just love it up. I gave this expense report to my assistant that I was stressed out for it 2 weeks before it was due, and then 2 weeks after because I didn't do it. It was always 2 weeks late. And she's been doing this for almost 5 months now. And she tells me the other day, gosh, I love doing this. It's so much fun. And I'm just like, what's wrong with you? Why is this fun? This is the worst thing ever. And no, but she loves it because it's a new responsibility. It's something new. So everything you don't like doing, playing to the strengths of the team, play to your strengths. Everything that you do that you love doing, man, you're going to put a lot more effort into it. So to come back to your question, at what size? We did it when we started noticing communication breakdowns. But if I could go back, I would have gave more responsibilities when we were smaller to one person. I would have had an office manager and I would have pulled them away from the front desk and put them in an office and just said, these are your responsibilities. Help me grow this thing. Let's do it.
Yeah. I have so many questions on that concept. So this comes up a lot. Office manager, an admin team member, those are not the same roles. Just go
Right.
a little bit deeper. What's been your experience in that? Because in all fairness, and if you're listening to this, I'm not calling you out, but they upgrade a team member who used to collect money to an office manager. And I'm like, that's not really an office manager. From your
Right.
definition, give us your definition of both and why it's so important as a dentist to understand that.
Yeah, because we do it because we want somebody to take on more responsibilities, but often our office manager, they're just our longest term front desk employee, and we don't move them into another role.
Right.
So the way that it works in my leadership team is my office manager is responsible for things like for collections, compliance, payroll, 401k, HR related things, making sure all our compliance, like with state forms and stuff. She's also the person that is going to handle upset patients if it gets escalated to that level. She is the one that's watching the collections, watching the insurance aging to make sure that the other team members are staying on top of it. So she is the overarching audit and administrative top person. She is not dealing with conflict between people. She will fire people, especially when sometimes her and I go back and forth and she's like, you do it this time. And I'm like, okay, it's my turn. But I like it when she does it because I don't like when
Right.
people cry when I talk to them.
Right.
So nobody, but that's her role. So, and she is removed from the front desk. So she becomes an auditing role, an overarching role. She is somebody on my office that is paid on a percentage of collections. So she has incentives to reach to increase her salary and bonuses and stuff. So it's having somebody else on your team that's truly invested as a stakeholder in your practice that is that's working with you instead of
Yeah.
you telling them what to do. And then it's also a lot of autonomy, but I think what a lot of people do is they say, hey, this is the office manager. Oh, what do they do? Oh, they the same thing as the front people. They just know how to do everything.
Right.
And I think you have to really focus on training. And I think we dropped the ball on that as well, because we think people are going to train and learn just by being in proximity together. And my results and my experience has been when we give somebody the one-on-one attention and intentional training that they need, focusing on these are the skills for 30 days, these are the skills for 60 days, these are the skills for 90 days, and following up with them and making sure we can check all those boxes, we don't have any issues. And an undertrained person, it's just like an underperforming person. They will bring down the team. Man, they'll say, hey, can you help me with this? And the person goes, man, how many times do I have to show this to you? They're not saying this, but they're just like, I can't get my job done because you don't know how to do your job. So it's one of those things that I think we forget about. But to come back to your office manager role, that's what my office manager is in the back, administrative things, credentialing, anything that needs to be done. She was the one who took the lead on getting the new server just recently. So that was that. We had a patient recently that had an implant placed by a specialist that no longer works in our practice. So she dealt with that specialist. He's going to remove the implant. He's going to place the bone graft. He is not going to replace the implant. So we're not too happy about that. But she is the one who went and called the patient. Hey, he's not going to do your implant. We are so sorry. We are going to take care of you. No worries. We'll get this figured out. And so she's on top of it. But this is behavior that has evolved over years after giving them responsibilities, and they know how to operate within the core values of the company because it's been modeled and it's been talked about and they see it.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to give you, I almost want to give you like stuff I hear and get your response. So people tell me all the time, and I want to ask you about the force hygiene capacity here in a second, but I'm just curious about this one. So I'll go to conferences all the time. Somebody will say, I'm just going to hire other dentists because I need more time off. I'm like, no, it's not a direct correlation there. You don't hire people and take time off. Do you know what I mean? I'm just throwing that at you. Give me your immediate response when somebody says, I'm just going to hire other dentists. And my first thought is, have you ever hired a dentist? They're like, no, I haven't. You know what I mean? So I'm like, okay, let's go there first. But I would love your response.
Hiring a dentist is a special position, and hiring a specialist is an even more special position.
Tell me more.
So if you thought dentists were quirky, start hiring specialists. No hate to any specialists. I know a lot of them, they're great. Right. So I would say, I think everybody should hire a dentist to back themselves out, but it's not you're right, like you mentioned, it's not a one-to-one switch. I have grown my practice to where I have enough patients to see all of my patients and give more new patients to somebody else. It's the next step in growth. It's not removing yourself and like, hey, I'm just going to run an associate driven practice where there's only one associate and I just see the few patients here and there. I mean, that's not going to be very profitable for the owner. You've got to get in those higher numbers. You got to get 1.5 land, 2 million land, 2.5 land. And so this is kind of comes back to like what I said about the forced hygiene capacity is that I think a lot of us, and I'm going to explain this, listeners, because you're probably, what the hell am I talking
Please.
about?
Yeah.
Is I believe that a practice can grow if I'm just big on math. I was just telling my daughter, she's doing y equals mx plus b. And she's like, why do I need to know this? And I'm like, well, let me tell you why, because math is important. So
Yeah.
if we go in our schedule, into our hygiene schedule, and we block out a certain number of new patients, and I would just say you do every other day, a hygienist will see 3 patients. So a full-time hygienist will see 6 patients a week if that's a 4-day week. So this averages out to a hygienist seeing 1.5 new patients every day. If you have 4 days a week, 4 weeks in a month, that will average out to it won't average, it will be 48 new patients a month. Okay. Now, for every new patient, now I'm going to go slow because I want people to understand this. 15% of the new patients in my practice will need periodontal treatment. So that means for every 6 new patients I see, 1 is going to need SRPs,
Right.
and they will need 2 quads of it. So for every 6 new patients, I need 2 SRP blocks. Now I'm putting these in the schedule. You cannot schedule on them unless it's a new patient or an SRP. You cannot put a recall patient there. Now, when my hygienists see, the rest of it's going to be filled with just recall. When my hygienists see a patient for recall or a new patient, they will look 6 months ahead and schedule their 6-month visit. At some point, we run out of room for recall patients. So now they're scheduling out 6 months and 6 months in a day, 6 months and 2 days, and so on and so on and so on, till they're like, hey, can we book these existing patients where the new patient slots are? And you're like, hell's to the no. We cannot, because this is what's going to grow your practice.
Right.
So if you think about seeing 48 patients, new patients in 1 month, 6 months from now, you're also going to see those 48 patients plus the existing 48 patients. So now you're at 96. And then by that 3rd recall cycle, you're full. So if you can see 48 patients a month, retain 100% of them, which is unrealistic, you can get yourself full to capacity with 2 hygienists to where you can keep a 3rd hygienist completely busy by that 18-month mark. But the thing that happens is we don't put those blocks in, and people say, well, I'm not prioritizing anything. You're talking
Right.
about prioritizing new patients. But the thing is, when you book an appointment 6 months ahead of time, and then you book a new patient 3 weeks ahead of time, that recall patient 6 months ahead, that took priority. And I see a lot of practices, they get stuck in this 700,000 to maybe 1.2 million land. And it's like, well, I don't know if I have enough new patients to see an associate, to have an associate come on or take on another hygienist. And the fact of the matter is they just don't have anywhere to put their new patients.
Right.
Now, let's talk about the other side. What if you block all these new patients and you can't fill them? Well, here you go. Now you've got your objective. Figure out how to fill them. Look at your online marketing, look at your website, look at everything that you're doing, because that's step 1. Set up the schedule in a manner that works for growth, and then fill the spots. You're setting up all these targets. Now you just got to hit them. And that's a whole nother discussion. But I think if we do that in that manner, I mean, we can get the capacity so much faster. I brought on my associate 3-4 years in. And when I look at my numbers back then, we were losing so many patients because we had nowhere to put them. But we were seeing so many new patients. It was like, oh, life's good. But had I been focused on this and had I done this, I would have realized it. And the way I did realize this is that my hygienist got really busy and they're like, wow, this is great. And I'm like, I have nothing to do. I have no new patients. I'm just sitting in my office. You can't cut off the new patient flow to an office. You've got to hold that space and prioritize it. Otherwise, I mean, we're not like a medical office where people just come in for routine care and that's what we do. We need new patients.
Yeah. I love what you're talking about. You're forcing people to think about their business model and what they're creating. And ultimately, there's some other benefits that come out of this. Patient selection is an important piece of your practice too. So if you start scheduling them out and holding those blocks, you're starting to say, I don't know if this is a good patient. A lot of dentists are like, just get everybody in. No, you only need a handful of people. Also, can you speak to this? Some of the people in your hygiene, in hygiene, they're healthy. They don't need to be seen every 6 months.
Yeah.
They don't have a lot of restorative needs, but yet, and they're good patients. So you don't need to see them. Would you agree with that? You know?
Yeah, totally. I mean, we have in our practice, we have on any given day, there will be two or three hygienists running that will not be doing an exam. So I know we used to have two docs for this one day, but right now we have one doc and there's
Yeah.
5 or 6 columns of hygiene for that one doc. And in Illinois, you can run columns, you can supervise so many, but you can run columns without doing the exam as long as they've had an exam within a year. So that has allowed us to grow our patient base, but then continue to serve our recall base. And it's all in the phrasing. I mean, we get
Right.
people like, well, my insurance pays for an exam. I want my exam. And we just say, you know what? The doc will be here if we need him to see anything, but I'm going to be looking and I'll tell you if we need to see him. Chances are we won't, but if we
Yeah.
do, they're there. Yeah, but you'll be fine. We'll take your x-rays in a year from now and you'll be great. So it's all in the way that we phrase it to the patients. It's not like, oh, we can see you, but we can't do an exam that day. It's
Right.
all right. Hey, come in and see me. You won't be seeing the doctor next time, but we'll clean your teeth to get you in and out. Just like that. I'll still be here to look and I'll let the doctor know if I see anything and we'll have him look if he does. So it's the way you phrase it, but it allows you to grow your patient base and see more people and have a more bigger patient base to pull from, essentially. And eventually you run out of room, which is where my practice is right now, which is why we dropped Delta.
Yeah.
We got 11 ops, 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. every day, and we are out of room. We can't see
Yeah.
anybody else.
I love that you did that. And I want you to talk about this because a lot of people, they're like, oh my gosh, no way. And I'm like, bottom line is it's really not Delta. It's how many of your patients pay your full fee. That's the real issue is like,
Right.
how many of these patients come to you because of you, not because they're on your list or blah, 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 blah. But talk about the other side of it. There is life on the other side of the wall,
Yeah.
right? And I'll even say this about your state. Your state is difficult. I mean, there's enough.
Most things in this state are.
Yeah, like it's not an easy state to do this in, and there's life on the other side. And also, can you incorporate forced hygiene capacity? Because a lot of people think, well, if I'm going to do this, that's going to dry up my hygiene schedule. What
Yeah.
did you find?
So this is great because it was actually last night we just got our insurance analysis for like I said, it was almost to the day 1 year ago that we dropped Delta. So I've got the insurance numbers and I got stats and I can't wait to share them right now. So we have retained 54% of our Delta patient base out of network. Going back, knowing what I know now, we could have done better. And I'll tell you why, is that we were in network with everything. We were in network with like an umbrella carrier and Delta and maybe one or two that have decent paying fee schedules, but Delta Premier became our lowest paying fee schedule and it's them. So we decided to drop that one first because we were at capacity. We couldn't see any more people. We couldn't open any more hours. Every chair was full. It was the right time. And my fear of doing it last, like most people, is that we would have been like, oh, we're okay. We're still seeing enough patients. We're still good. And then we would get to the point where Delta was 33% of my practice. And then I'm ready to drop Delta and it might be 60% of my practice at that point. And I did not want to set myself up for that. So we dropped Delta. Where we screwed up is I find the biggest thing with Delta is the assignment of benefit. That is the biggest roadblock to handle with the patients. They don't like paying us up front and getting reimbursed. So what we found is that, we can talk about it in a certain way and it helps, but a lot of Deltas, maybe like 50%, I think, if we call, they allow us to take the assignment of benefit, which I don't know. I'm telling people about this and they're just like, no way. I'm like, we're doing it. It's happening. So that has been helpful. But where we really screwed up is that we didn't realize how big our diagnostic and our just preventative fees were. I mean, they were astronomical. And the thing is if you came to my practice as a cash patient, we had a per visit hygiene fee. It was $139. And that's all you paid. So it didn't matter what the fee said in the computer. I mean, we set those off of those fee schedules. Hey, set it at 70% of your area or something like that. And then every time somebody saw us in network, they paid the contracted fee. So now we're out of network and we're billing somebody $400 for a cleaning and an exam.
Mhm.
And we're saying, hey, your out of network benefits are 100%. Give us $400. Delta's going to send you a check for $400. They get a check for like $160 and they are pissed off. They're mad. And the reason being is because Delta will only pay 100% up to their allowable fee.
Right.
So what this took for us is starting to build another fee schedule of what the allowable fees are so that we could estimate what they would pay. But also, man, I'm going from getting $120 a cleaning to now $400. I'm happy with 160, 170. That's a huge percentage gain. I don't need $400, but that was an arbitrary fee that
Right.
everyone sets. And they're like, this is my area. Nobody's using those fees. They don't mean
Right.
anything. Everyone's in network. So we lost a lot of people because of that, because they're like, I'm not paying $260 out of pocket after you got 140 to get my teeth cleaned. And I don't blame them. I don't know if I would either. I mean, I think
Right.
we're special and we're worth it, but I don't know if we're worth that. So we lowered our fees to more in line with Delta's allowable fees. So it was more, affordable and more reasonable, actually. And what we saw was even though we lost, 46% of our Delta base, we increased our fees with Delta by 30%. And
What?
this,
What are you talking
yeah.
about? Like
So
how does that work?
so then we actually like our effective fees for the whole entire practice have gone up by almost 12, 13%.
Right.
So did it hurt emotionally? People don't
Right.
want to see you anymore, and they hurt your feelings, but they do come back. Everyone said that, and they did. They went somewhere else and they didn't like it, and a lot of them are coming back now, which is awesome. I can't wait to check it in 6 months because I think we're going to retain even more. But it hurts emotionally and psychologically. But bottom line, it's so cliche to say, I wish we would have done it sooner, just like
Yeah.
everybody says. And it wasn't hard to keep people when we were scheduling and letting them know about it. It was hard when that assignment benefit thing happened and when we were charging so much for cleanings. And we didn't discover that till 4 months into the drop. I just completely dropped the ball on it. I was so busy with other things. I wasn't focusing on it. And I was like, how come nobody told me about this? But,
Yeah.
retrospect, hindsight's 2020. Now I know, and now I know. So, okay, you mentioned something about new patients. We have seen a decrease in new patients. We're seeing about maybe 40% as many Delta new patients as we used to. That is a focus that we are focusing on right now at my practice. How can we convert more Delta patients to be new patients? Because right when we did it, we saw like a 33% drop in new patients. We weren't able to get any Delta people in new. We're getting better with that, but that is a prime focus of us for this quarter because I think we can do it. And Blue Cross is next.
Yeah.
Blue Cross is next, and then it's MetLife, and we're just going to keep doing it because I know my team's got it in them. It's just a matter, and I know we provide the level of care. And I'm kind of, we're at capacity. So it's an easy decision for us to make because we have no other options other than to thin the herd or just raise our fees. And you can't do that when you're in PPOs.
Yeah. Now go back to this. I could keep you on for 2 hours here because I love all the phrases. Your capacity. Capacity is one of the most poorly defined things across the board. So I already know what you're going to say or have an idea what you're going to say, and I'm going to love it. But sometimes people think capacity is okay. So Paul, I totally understand what you're saying. Well, I'm just going to add some ops and I'm going to, work in the evenings and we'll pick up a Saturday. And they think expanding capacity is adding hours or chairs or days. I'm like, no, adding hours is not expanding capacity. Adding hours is adding hours. Adding chairs is adding chairs. Capacity, you're talking about a container that we're going to do this. And can I ask, I don't even know, like, are you in a large, what's the population surrounding you? Are you in a big
Our
town?
town is maybe 22,000, but we have like two adjacent towns that are about 20,000, and then one that's Joliet, Illinois, a little bit west of us. So we're in a fairly populated area, but it's suburbs and farms.
Right.
So it's not like it gets a lot more dense when you get closer to Chicago. We're about 35 miles south of Chicago. And like I mentioned before the call, like you go 1 mile south of my practice, it's farm fields for 40, 50 miles. Yeah.
Okay. That helps me a ton. So you're not in an area that has millions of people that
Yeah.
are just, you have a big sign and you're going to get some, some from that. But go back to the capacity issue. How do you define capacity? Go a little bit deeper with that. Like, I don't even know. How many days do you work? Do you see patients in the evening? I'm sure you have a philosophical stance on that.
Yeah, capacity is how many people you can see. And that, like you mentioned, it can be, it's limited by your chairs, it's limited by your hours, it's limited by your providers. So those will all expand the level of the amount of people you will be able to see. But then it's also limited by how quickly and efficient your procedures are and how well and efficiently you are scheduling. So you could not change your hours at all, and you could see more people if you got really intentional about the schedule and your workflow and working with your assistants and your front end team and coming up with this is the way we do it every time so we can work through things quickly. So I would say I define capacity as how many people can you see? You can increase capacity, expanding your hours, expanding your facility and getting more chairs so that you can expand your providers. Those all work too. Or you can, if we think of it as a container and it's full of water, it can only take so much.
Right.
Or you scoop out some of that water and you change it to wine, and that's dropping insurance. You say, we're going to put something better in this container, the better the water. We're going to put some out of network patients. So that's another thing. So like I mentioned, we were at capacity, and what that looks like in my office is looking 6 months ahead, and there's nowhere to put a recall patient because we're still holding space for new patients. So we dropped Delta knowing we're going to lose some of these people. We lost 46% or 46%. And that helped with our capacity problem, but that's temporary because we're retaining our patients and we're focusing on that retention rate. So we'll be back. We'll be back there in 2 recall cycles. I've done the math. We're going to be right back there. And that's when it's Blue Cross time, which is right about now. We're going to start moving forward on Blue Cross. We're going to start telling the patients that next time they see us, we're going to be out of network. So, and at some point we're going to be out of every network and we might get to capacity again. And that's a future Paul problem I don't want to solve right now. I don't have the answer for that. I don't. But yeah, we are running 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. So 13 hours, Monday through Thursday. We do a 9-hour day on Friday, and we do a 6-hour day on Saturday. And those are all the hours I'm willing to open. And I'm not willing to expand any more space or get any more chairs. Almost every hour we're open, we're running all 11 chairs for that 13 hours straight. So it's tight. But it's a testament to the level of care that we provide and our intentionality and our experience. I think that's what it all came down to. People want what we're providing for them. And it's not because of my composite and it's not because of the brand of etch I use. It's because of the way we take care of people and how, we provide an experience. We're like Disney. There are things we have to say and things we have to do that are not necessarily scripted, but they are touch points that I want to happen. And I think a patient would leave and they wouldn't say, oh my gosh, you got to go to this dentist. The way they greet you in the waiting room and walk you back and talk with the small talk and how they put their hand out and it just feels so good. But they're going to say, wow, they take great care of people. And they won't realize that we have rehearsed the way to get the patient for the waiting room. We've rehearsed our patient experience, the things that we talk about, the things that we say about our practice. Every element has been optimized so that we can get the most out of every touch point.
Yeah. I love it. I have like 10 more questions, but I can't keep you all night because I have a daughter and it's her birthday tonight. And I promised I'd be leaving pretty soon.
You got away at all. Yeah.
No, but I'm going to have you back because I already know what I'm going to ask you on the next round when we get together because I absolutely love this. I want people to know a little bit more. I know people are going to be listening to this and they're going to want to know more about you. And I want you to sit in there. But before we do that, give us some final thoughts on this journey that you've had and just wrapping up today. What are your final thoughts?
Yeah. If I could give anyone final thoughts, a lot of dentists, we are looking forward to that day we can retire. And one thing I wish I would have done at the beginning of my career is just forget about it because you can get to your number. And it's Zig Ziglar says it's a quote, like everybody wants to know that money doesn't buy you happiness, but they still want to find out for themselves. You can get to this level of just a lot of income and a lot of time off and stuff and get to this number that you're like, well, I'm just going to hang it up and retire. You're not going to do it. You're just not going to do it. You're going to be so bored out of your mind. You've got to engage in something. So I was always focused on, I want to retire by 40. So I had to hit this number, this number, this number, this number. And then when I got there, I was like, well, now what? And I'm just like, well, gosh, if I would have known when I was 30 years old that I would work until I could no longer work anymore, instead of saving all that money, I would have been doing experiences with my family, spending more time with my family, doing more things. So that would be my biggest advice, is that realizing there is nothing, you can want to retire early, but you better have something else to do. Just know that you're always going to be doing something. I think we go on a vacation with our family and we say, wow, this is great. I didn't get bothered from work. I was with my family. I need to not work ever again. Then I'll be happy. Yeah. It wasn't that. It was that you just, you had a little bit more balance. And I think we can all find a balance. And the beauty of practice ownership is that It's so doable if we get methodical about it, and we can set up our practices in a way that just allow us to live these like wonderful lives and fulfilling lives. And it doesn't have to be a grind, and it doesn't have to stress you out, and it doesn't have to burn you out. I see the things people say online. I think there's never been a better time to be a dental practice owner right now.
Yeah.
But you've got to do the right things. You can't just throw a sign on the door and put your degree on the wall and just show up. And the things I'm talking about doing, they're not hard to do. They
Yeah.
are very easy to do. You just got to do them and commit to doing them on a regular cadence to run your business. And so that would be my final thoughts. I hope that was
Amen.
satisfactory to the listeners.
Oh, so well said too. I totally agree with you. Number one, you know, retirement looks terrible. It just does. I mean, I've saved forever, but like, I think I would just get fat and eat a lot. And I like golf, but I don't love it, you know? And
Me
I
too.
think part of what drives you, I would imagine, is just creating value for other human beings. Like there's a huge sense of satisfaction that comes from meaningful work, you know?
Absolutely.
Type of a thing. And the other thing I could probably debate, which I don't have any data on, is I think all of us are going to be living longer. And no, you know, there's a good chance you're going to live. I mean, you're a pretty healthy guy. You could live to 98. I don't care how much money you saved. You're going to run out of it at some point. And so like, why not find a way to create value, still make an income, stay busy. And this is the biggest part that's got to stay busy, is like, you got to think through these challenges. I have no doubt you're going to solve more complex problems, and it's going to give you a lot of satisfaction by solving these problems. Don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as you grow as a person and you grow your practice, we're all, I mean, you might be a decent leader, you might not be the best leader, you can learn leadership, and I think it's important. But I will tell you, my level of leadership now is complete 180 from where it started. And you know, backing off with my leadership team and letting them handle more, that was the next level in my leadership. Instead of leading a whole team, I am going to focus on these 4 people and scale. And it just comes down to everything, just self-growth, growing as a person. And just, it's life is fun. Life is fun when you're engaged. And like you mentioned, man, the podcast, it was a side gig for a really long time. This past year, I have got so much fulfillment from watching my clients do what I was talking about on this podcast. And before it was like, yeah, hey, do you do coaching? Yeah, I guess so. I'll try it. And I've been doing coaching for 5 years, but now I'm like, I want to help people, and I am engaged with them, and I'm helping them, and I am making sure that they're hitting their goals. And it's been so fun for me.
Yeah.
And this has become my passion. As much as I'd love to say I'm so passionate about the office, it's not growing anymore, so it's not as fun for me. I want to create, I want to see growth, and I want to utilize my problem set, my skills to solve problems. So that's where I'm at right now.
Well, I know people are listening to this. They're going to want to learn more about you. I'm going to tell them, check out your podcast. But if I'm listening to this, where do I go to find out more about you and what you do? Where do I go?
Yeah, go to dentalpracticeheroes.com. That is my website. Heroes is plural. Dental Practice Heroes spelled all the way out. You know, all my stuff's on there. Got some trainings, got some coaching options, got some freebies, free webinar on there. My webinar right now is how to make $1 million a year on 3 days or less a week. And I like it. That sounds insane. Watch the webinar. It's not as insane as you think. And so, yeah, just go to the website, all my offerings, podcast. And yeah, thanks for having me on, Kirk. Really appreciate it, man.
Oh my gosh, pleasure's all mine. I'm going to have you back, and we're going to solve some more problems that the world has in dentistry. I've enjoyed this very much so. So thanks for being on. So we'll stick around while we say goodbye to everybody else, Paul. But thank you guys for listening to the Best Practices Show. This is what the show is all about. Just talking about the real problems dentists have and giving you some great solutions and some great information to help you create a better practice and better life. So I hope you enjoyed today. Check out what Paul does. If you're not taking notes, don't worry. We're taking notes for you. You can flip up to the show notes. There's going to be links in there to everything Paul mentioned. Check it out. And make sure you follow his podcast. So thanks for the suggestions you guys keep sending. We got them all lined up, and we're going to keep bringing it. So until we see you guys next time, or you hear from us next time, keep watching or keep listening to the Best Practices Show. You guys enjoy your day.